is February 7th, 2022. And today is the appearance day of Advaita Acharya. Here we're looking at Caitanya Charitamrita Adi Leela, chapters 6 and 12 by Krishna Das Kaviraj, translated by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. So we're going to look at three topics. First of all, how Advaita Acharya is the cause of creation. And then we're going to look at how he is a teacher of bhakti, how he called for the Lord, how he has a mood of a servant. Then we're going to look at Advaitacharya's wonderful followers, particularly Achyutananda, Krishna Mishra, Sri Gopala, and Kamalakanta Vishvasa. Let's look first at how Advaitacharya is the cause of creation. So it's quite interesting that in many religious systems, the idea of God is rather limited. There's one God, and he creates. In the Vedic literature, we know that, yes, there's one God and he creates, but he creates through his various expansions. I was just reading in the 10th canto, it was in chapter 2, the Srila Prabhupada commenting how if a wealthy man has many servants or assistants, that those servants or assistants are doing so many things that could be said to be done by the master, but the master is not directly involved in those affairs. So in the same way, things are done by the Lord's energies, and the Lord being one different from his energies, one can say that he is doing all of those things, but yet personally he is simply enjoying. So the Lord has his expansion as Maha Vishnu. In CC Adi 6.7, Krishna Das Kaviraj says that Maha Vishnu performs all the functions for the creation of the universe. Sri Advaita Acharya is his direct incarnation. So Mahavishnu, of course, he's the first Purusha who lies down in the causal ocean, the ocean of cause. So Srila Prabhupada, I remember the first time I heard him speak in person, he was saying that everyone is a controller of something, but although we are each controllers of something, we are also controlled. And when you come to the controller who is not controlled, then you come to God. In a similar way, we can say that every being has its origin. We all have an origin in our parents. And our parents have an origin in their parents. And their parents have an origin in their parents. Now, it's not reasonable to say that there's an infinite regress, nor is it reasonable to say, certainly not, that it's circular. Therefore, there must be some point of origin which itself does not have an origin. Anadir Adir Govinda. So he has no beginning, and he is the beginning. So Mahavishnu is the beginning. He lies down on the ocean of cause. And from his breathing come out the different universes. Just like when we breathe, we create very micro universes of various tiny living entities that each have their own sphere of life, although invisible to the naked eye. So why wouldn't God have a universe that is made up of all of us coming out of his breathing? So this is the form of the Lord, that is Advaita Acharya. In CC Adi 6:16-17, Krishna Das Kaviraj writes, Lord Vishnu himself is the efficient nimitta cause of the material world, and Narayana in the form of Sri Advaita is the material cause, upadana. Lord Vishnu in his efficient aspect glances over the material energy, and Sri Advaita as the material cause creates the material world. So here again we see the Lord as his particular expansion, as the creator, his expansion as the first cause. And we can say that's being done by Krishna because all of these incarnations of Krishna are all Krishna. At the same time, we can say that this is an expansion of Krishna, who's particularly involved with creation and manifests a different aspect of Krishna's personality than Krishna himself. So we don't find that Mahavishnu is dancing with the gopis, for example, or stealing butter, even though he's the same person. And sometimes I like to think about this as the Lord at home and the Lord at work. So this is the Lord's work, creating the material world, and that is being done by Advaita Acharya. Imagine Advaita Acharya, God the Supreme Father, was walking on this earth just a little more than 500 years ago. In CC Adi 621, is there a problem? Did she say whether or not she could see the picture? Can you ask her? I didn't know. This is a That's fine. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram,
probably something to be taken care of there.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram.
Did you ask her whether or not she can see the picture?
Sit properly.
All right. Well, go on. So Advaitacharya from CC Adi 621. Advaitacharya is the creator of millions and millions of universes, and by his expansions as Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, he maintains each and every universe. You're not able to figure out what it is. Did she say whether or not she can see the picture? Okay, would you send a message to Jagat Guru? Because next week I'm going to be doing a presentation on Lord Nityananda with sound, and most likely we will have more people here at that time. So if you could just message Jagat Guru and let him know that there's a problem. I doubt if he's up right now. Let's Krishna Priya let you know whether or not she can see the picture. Can you hear the class down in the kitchen? Thank you for caring.
So after looking at Advaitacharya as the cause of creation, we will now look at Advaitacharya as the teacher of bhakti. And it's interesting that the Lord himself teaches the process of bhakti, that the Lord himself teaches how to love him. Of course, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, this is one of the main purposes of his incarnation, but such is the case also for Advaita Acharya. In CC Adi 627, Krishnadas Kaviraj states, as he had formerly created all the universes, now he descended to introduce the path of bhakti. In CC Adi 6:34-65, it's described how Advaitacharya worshipped Krishna with tulsi leaves and water of the Ganga and called for him in a loud voice. Thus, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared on earth, accompanied by his personal associates. It is through Advaitacharya that Lord Chaitanya spread the Sankirtan movement, and through him that he delivered
the world. So this is quite a statement of Krishnadas Kaviraj, because Advaita Acharya considers that it was through Lord Caitanya that the world was delivered and the Sankirtan movement is spread. However, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Krishnadas Kaviraj are considering that it was through Advaita Acharya that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu spread the Sankirtan movement and delivered the world. Now, it makes a lot of sense that the form of the Lord, who is the Father of the universe, who's the creator of the universe, is going to have the primary concern with the deliverance of the universe. Right? If I'm the parent of a child, I'm going to have more concern with the welfare of that child than other people are. Right? That's just natural. So the form of the Lord, who's particularly involved with creating the world, when he sees that the world is becoming degraded, he becomes very concerned. And it's interesting that Advaita Acharya didn't think that he personally could take care of it. I mean, I also find that very interesting. He's God. Why couldn't he directly deliver the world? But he felt that the situation was such that he wanted avatari, he wanted himself to come in his own original form. Of course, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the Lord's original form in the mood of a devotee. But how interesting that Advaita Acharya felt, actually, although it's me, I want me to come in another form. So this is very bewildering, this concept that there's one God, and yet he has unlimited forms. Advaitam Achyutam Anadi Mananta Rupam Ajam Purana Purusham Navayovanam Cha. So Ananta Rupam can mean his form is unlimited, just like Mother Yasoda tries to tie him up, and she can't because he has an unlimited form. But it can also mean that there are unlimited forms of the Godhead. And I think this is a little hard for us to understand. You know, if I could expand into many, many forms, that one form would ask another form to do something. So it's like that. Advaita Acharya is one form of the Lord, asking another form, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you come and deliver the world. I don't feel qualified. So then, hearing this prayer of Advaita Acharya, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, my dear Acharya, I'm very pleased by your prayers. Now you can ask from me any benediction you like. So again, this is so humorous that the Lord in one form is praying to the Lord in another form, who says, yes, I can hear your prayers. What would you like? Of course, externally, to the vision of those in this world, Advaita Acharya is a devotee of the Lord, praying to the Lord. And thus he sets an example for all of us that when there are difficulties beyond our capacity to deal with, that we ask the Lord, please come and help me. And factually, everything is beyond my capacity to deal with. So I should always be begging for the Lord to help me. Yes, I know myself, just trying to practice Krishna consciousness is beyond my capacity. To chant the holy name with love, to offer respects to everyone, not to want any respect in return. Right? Any of these things, I don't have the capacity. If I try to do it, I fail over and over and over again. But if I say to the Lord, you please infuse me with your energy. I like the prayer that Bhishma made to Krishna when Bhishma was fighting with Jarasandhar. So it's interesting. Krishna said, you fight with Jarasandhar. You know, it was all arranged, and Krishna's standing right there, and Bhima and Jarasandhar are fighting every day for a lunar month. And at the end of that time, Bhima said, Nashaktoham Jarasandham nirjaitam yudimadava. Nashaktoham. I don't have the Shakti. Or I don't have the Shakti to kill Jarasandha. Nirjaitam yudimadava. I cannot defeat him in battle, O Madhava. And then Krishna infused him with his energy. Apyayam swena tejasa. Krishna gave Bhima his energy. So in a similar way, Advaita Acharya, taking this mood of a devotee, is saying, I can't deliver the Lord. You please. I can't deliver the world. And then Lord Caitanya, who's also the Lord, is saying, what would you like? And Adoyta said, I want that you distribute love of God even to the women, the laborers, and the ignorant fools, to everyone. We have, even now in 2022, even members of our own Hare Krishna movement who feel that aspects of bhakti should not be given to people like women and laborers. But Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu specifically came to fulfill the prayer of Advaitacharya that bhakti would be given to everyone, even ordinary people, men, women, Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras, everyone. And GC Adi 6:40-43, thinking Advaitacharya is a disciple of Madhavendra Puri, Lord Chaitanya obeys him, respecting him as a spiritual master. To maintain the proper etiquette for the principles of religion, Lord Chaitanya bows down at the lotus feet of Sri Advaitacharya with reverential prayers and devotion. So this is also fascinating how Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu treats Advaitacharya as his elder. You know, Advaitacharya is praying to the Lord as a superior, and then the Lord comes and treats Advaitacharya as a superior. That you're a disciple of Madhavendra Puri and you're older than me, therefore I offer you all reverence. But in Adi 6:40-43, it's mentioned that Advaitacharya thinks that Lord Chaitanya is his master. So you have this kind of competition, that he thinks of himself as a servant of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He forgets himself in the joy of that conception, and he teaches everyone, you are servants of Lord Chaitanya. So, of course, we see in the science of rasa that the Lord has people as his elders. Nanda, Yasoda, Vasudeva, Devaki, Kunti, Sandipani Muni, so forth and so on. But those elders do not see Krishna as their master. Of course, sometimes Vasudeva and Devaki become aware of the Lord's majesty and do get into more of a mood of a servant. But I was thinking a lot about Akrura. Akrura is in Dasya Bhav. Akrura is not in Vatsalya Ras. He's in Dasya Ras. He's in the mood of a servant. But he's the uncle of Krishna and Balaram. So Krishna and Balaram see him as their elder, but yet Akrura sees Krishna and Balaram as his masters. So here we have something roughly equivalent. Of course, here Advaitacharya and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are both Vishnu Tattva. Akrura is a jiva. But here we have, there's this competition where Advaitacharya is respecting Lord Chaitanya as a master, and Lord Chaitanya is respecting Advaitacharya as his superior. So this conception of servitude, this dasya ras, is explained in 6:44-45. It gives such an ocean of joy in the soul that even the oneness of the Absolute, if multiplied by 10 million times, could not compare to a drop of it. Now, we hear that and we think, what fun is it being in the Brahman? But actually, there's great bliss being in the Brahman. And if you multiplied that by 10 million times, you wouldn't have a drop of the happiness of the Dasya Ras. And so Advaitacharya says, Nityananda and I are servants of Lord Chaitanya. Nowhere else is there as much joy as in this emotion. Adi 6:86-88. Advaitacharya says, I am a servant of Lord Chaitanya. I am a servant of Lord Chaitanya. I am a servant of Lord Chaitanya. And I am a servant of his servants. Saying this, Advaitacharya dances and sings. The source of the sentiment of servitude is indeed Lord Balaram. And all of his expansions are influenced by this ecstasy. So in Bengali, it's Chaitanya Dasa Mui, Chaitanya Dasa, Chaitanya Dasa Mui, Tanra Dasera Dasa. I am a servant of Lord Chaitanya, I am a servant of Lord Chaitanya, I am a servant of Lord Chaitanya, and I am a servant of his servants. This is a wonderful mood to enter into, to say this prayer before we chant our japa, before we do our puja, before we do kirtan, before we do any service, to get into this mood. I am not this body. I am not my upadis with this body. Chaitanya Dasa Mui, Chaitanya Dasa, Chaitanya Dasa Mui, Tanra Dasera Dasa. We're going to look at
some of the key followers of Advaita Acharya. Here we're looking at Caitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila, chapter 12. This is text 8 to 9. That at first all the followers of Advaita Acharya shared a single opinion, but later they followed two different opinions, as ordained by providence, which I find it interesting that it was ordained by providence that they followed two different opinions. Some of the disciples strictly accepted the orders of the Acharya, and others deviated, independently concocting their own opinions under the spell of Devi Maya. So under the spell of Devi Maya. So this was done as part of the plan of the Lord. This wasn't some ordinary illusion. CC Adi 12:10. The order of the spiritual master is the active principle in spiritual life. Anyone who disobeys the order of the spiritual master immediately becomes useless. And what to say? It's a heavy instruction. It's an instruction by Krishna Das Kaviraj. Srila Prabhupada writes there that among his godbrothers, some of them disobeyed the order of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati and became useless. Prabhupada writes about, in another place, how one of his godbrothers, everyone knew that he had personal ambition. And they told Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, this man has some personal ambition. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati disregarded it. And he said, that's all right, he's doing a lot of service. After the passing of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, this man tried to become an Acharya, and he started legal cases and things like that. And Srila Prabhupada said that this particular godbrother, he wanted the properties. And because he was doing service, Krishna gave him the properties, but Krishna did not give him the mission. Our Srila Prabhupada didn't get any of the Gaudiya Math properties, but he certainly was one of the key persons to take up the mission of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. So this is a very interesting situation where we can understand that a person may appear to be blessed by the Lord and be a follower, but may actually be useless. They may not have any potency to spread the Krishna consciousness movement. And if we want potency, we have to be obedient. We have to keep our connection. All right, let's look at Advaitacharya's obedient followers. One of the most famous is Achyutananda. Achyutananda was one of the sons of Advaitacharya. And when he was just a little boy, he asked his father, he said, who is the spiritual master of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu? And Advaitacharya answered, the spiritual master is Keshava Bharati. And Achyutananda was very upset. Now, in those days, in that culture, to contradict your father was not really so much accepted in that culture. There was extreme reverence for one's father. But Achyutananda said, I don't see how Keshava Bharati could be the spiritual master of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. Lord Chaitanya is the spiritual master of all the 14 worlds. How can you say that someone else is his spiritual master? This is not approved by any authorized scripture. Now, Advaitacharya, instead of feeling upset that his own son had contradicted him and his own son had told him, you're saying something that's not approved by any scripture, instead Advaitacharya was very happy. Like, yes, you've actually understood the real fact, the real esoteric fact that Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu is everyone's guru. So this is such a sweet relationship here and going on between Advaitacharya and his son Achyutananda, and how Achyutananda is seeing the Lord. Okay, another example is Krishna Mishra, who is another son of Advaitacharya. And in CC Adi 12:18, it says that Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu was always sitting in the heart of the son of Advaita Acharya.
So in one sense we can say, well, Krishna's in everyone's heart. Isn't Krishna sitting in everyone's heart? What are we talking about here? But of course, Krishna is everyone's heart as the Paramatma, right? Ishwara Sarvabhutanam Hridesha Arjuna Tistati. But here, it wasn't the expansion as the Paramatma, but it was Caitanya Mahaprabhu himself, him in the mood of Caitanya Mahaprabhu. In other words, Krishna Mishra was constantly absorbed in the service and the form and the mood of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. And therefore he had such an intimate relationship with Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu that within his heart the Lord was there. So this is one of our goals in our Hare Krishna movement, that we should have such love for the particular form of the Lord that we worship, that form of the Lord is always situated within our heart. And in that way, we never feel separation. Of course, there's an ecstatic separation, that's another thing. But that we always feel that the Lord is with us. Then we have Sri Gopal. So Gopal is another son of Advaita Acharya and is mentioned in Adi 12, 19 to 26. So at the Rath Yatra, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu was personally cleaning the Gundicha temple. He was cleaning the Gundicha temple with his own cloth. And at that time, Gopal was dancing in front of the Lord with great love and happiness. So while this cleaning is going on, and everyone is cleaning, and you remember they're just saying Krishna, Krishna, and they're giving each other water pots, and they're giving each other brooms. But Advaita Acharya's son, Sri Gopal, was dancing. And while Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu and Advaita Acharya chanted the Hare Krishna mantra and danced, there were various symptoms in their bodies of ecstasy, and their minds were very pleased. So just imagine being at this kirtan of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu and Advaita Acharya. What kind of ecstatic symptoms they would be manifesting, and how this would be bringing joy to everyone who was watching. But while all of them danced, Gopala was dancing and dancing and dancing also. And then he fainted and fell to the ground unconscious. Advaita Acharya became very unhappy. In this world, we have people that we're very attached to, our children, our spouses, our friends. And if anything bad happens to them, we also feel very unhappy. So this is also true for the Lord. So Advaita Acharya took his son on his lap, and he began to chant in a Singha mantra. Yato nisingo, parato nisingo, yato yamitato nisingo. Asking for the Lord's protection. I don't know exactly what mantra he chanted. Maybe he chanted Vidikshu Dikshu Dramadhasamanta Dantarbahir Bhagavan Narasimha Paya Paya Loka Bayam Swanena Swateja Sagrasta Samastateja. Advaita Acharya chanted various Nisingha mantras, and they didn't work. Gopal didn't come to consciousness. And all the devotees who were there started to cry in great sorrow. Then Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu put his hand on the chest of Gopal and said, "My dear Gopal, get up, chant the holy name of the Lord." When Gopal heard this sound and felt the touch of the Lord, he immediately got up, and all the Vaishnavas chanted, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, in great jubilation. How interesting that again the Lord himself, as Lord Nrsingadev, didn't respond to the prayers of the Lord himself as Advaita Acharya. And it was Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu who came and saved the life of Gopal. Then we have a very interesting story from Adi 12:28-54 of Kamalakanta Vishvasa. Kamalakanta Vishvasa was a very confidential servant of Advaita Acharya. And in Jagannath Puri, he sent a note to King Prataparudra. Now, this note was supposed to be confidential, sent just to the king. But somehow, somebody gave that note to Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. And so Lord Chaitanya saw this note. So Kamalakanta Vishvasa wrote a note to the king, and he says, Advaita Acharya, who's the Supreme Lord, has a debt. Would you help him pay it? So, we do this, right? If our friend's in trouble, we may go confidentially to an authority and say, hey, my friend has a problem. Nowadays, what we often do, it's not so confidential. We do a GoFundMe, right? Like we set up some kind of crowdfunding. But sometimes people are hesitant, right, to get other people to help them out financially. So we might just do it more confidentially. You might go to someone and say, hey, my friend's having some financial trouble. Could you please help him out? And Maharaj Prataparudra, as the king, obviously is in a financial position to do that. So this was a very interesting note because Kamalakanta Vishvas says, my master's God. Okay, the person I'm serving, he's God. But he has a debt. So this doesn't make any sense. How can God have a debt? So when Lord Chaitanya read this note, he was very unhappy. But in his unhappiness, he smiled. And he said, Kamalakanta Vishvas has said that the Supreme Lord is a poverty-stricken beggar. So Lord Chaitanya told his servant Govinda, from now on, don't let that Kamalakanta Vishvas come to see me. Because he said God can be in debt. What is this nonsense? This is offensive. Don't let him come and see me. So Kamalakanta heard about this, and he became very unhappy. He's like, I can't see Lord Chaitanya anymore. I was just trying to serve my master, Advaita Acharya. I was trying to do some service, and now I can't see Lord Chaitanya anymore. But when Advaita Acharya heard that Kamalakanta Vishvas was forbidden to see Lord Chaitanya, he became very happy. Now, isn't that strange? And Advaita Acharya said to his servant, he said, you're very fortunate to be punished by the Supreme Lord. He said, I was chastised previously for teaching about liberation as the ultimate goal, and then I was very happy. Also, Sachi Devi was punished. Remember, Sachi Devi had blamed Advaita Acharya for her son taking sannyas. And for that, Lord Chaitanya was angry with her. And he said, when Lord Chaitanya was angry with me, when Lord Chaitanya was angry with Sachi, we were feeling very fortunate. Why is that? Because it shows intimacy. I don't punish people who don't have any intimate relationship with me. How could I? So then Advaita Acharya said to Lord Chaitanya, the favor you have shown Kamalakanta is so great that even to me you have not shown such favor. What offense have I committed at your lotus feet? Now remember back in the beginning we were saying that Advaita Acharya saw Lord Chaitanya as his master. He had this mood of Dasi ras. But Lord Chaitanya always treated him as a superior. Now, we certainly don't punish our superiors. At least not in a civilized society. You don't say to your parents, you can't talk to me anymore. You don't say to your master, you can't talk to me anymore. That's in a civilized society, that doesn't go on. But Advaita Acharya was considering that he was a servant, not a superior. And so he's saying, you haven't treated me as your servant. You treated Kamalakanta Vishvas as your servant, but you don't treat me as your servant. I must have offended you. So then Lord Chaitanya laughed and laughed. And then he called Kamalakanta Vishvas back and said, okay, you can come see me. Then Advaita Acharya says, why have you called this man back? Now he's cheated me twice. First you treated him as a servant by punishing him, then you show him intimacy by having him back. And then Lord Caitanya was so satisfied. This is how we should see the dealings of the Lord with ourselves. If the Lord seems to punish us, it is due to intimacy, and if the Lord calls us back, it is due to intimacy. Then Lord Caitanya instructed Kamalakanta, why are you damaging Advaitacharya's religious principles? If a spiritual master accepts money or grains from materialists, his mind becomes polluted. Now this, of course, is a very deep instruction. He said, Advaitacharya, he's a Brahmana, he's a guru. Why are you asking him to get a personal favor from the king? When you get a personal favor from people, you become indebted. It is a very important point. If you get grains or money from materialistic people. In other words, if we become dependent on materialistic people for our maintenance, then we are not going to be objective about dealing with those people, and our religious principles become compromised. And Mahaprabhu said, then your mind is polluted, and it'll be very difficult to remember Krishna, and our life becomes unproductive. And we've seen this in our Hare Krishna movement. If a temple or a devotee becomes beholden to one very rich person, then everything becomes polluted. That rich person can then dictate temple policies and so forth. And once truthfulness is compromised, it's far better to get lots of small donations from many people than to have things heavily dependent on one rich person. And we've seen this lesson over and over and over again. You know, especially if it's on an ongoing basis. If some very wealthy person is maintaining something over and over, and if you don't please that person, the money will stop coming. You know, that's a really difficult position. This is the position, of course, that Bhisma and Dronacharya and Kripacharya were in. And so Lord Caitanya said to Kamalakanta Vishwas, you shouldn't have done this. You shouldn't have tried to make Advaitacharya beholden to King Prataparudra. He says, thus one becomes unpopular in the eyes of the people in general. This damages his religiosity and fame. A Vaishnava, especially one who acts as a spiritual master, must not act in such a way. One should always be conscious of this fact. So certainly we can receive donations, but we should be very careful that there are not some kind of harmful strings attached. I mean, again, we've seen this happen. We've seen people, they give a lot of money and then they want us to worship demigods, or they want us to change the process in some way. Okay, so in summary, we looked at Advaitacharya as the cause of creation, as the teacher of bhakti, in that he called for the Lord and that he has a mood of servant. His wonderful followers, Achyutananda, Krishna Mishra, Sri Gopal, and Kamalakanta Vishwas. Jai Jai Sri Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Jai Advaita Chandra, Jai Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Krishna Das Kaviraj Ki Jai. Do you have any questions? Yes. Yes. So we want to get Lakshmi from materialistic people so they will have some benefit. However, we want to be very careful. As I said, it's generally better to get donations widely. Like if you want to have some project, it's better to get donations from 100 people or 500 people rather than just one person. Because when you get from just one person, that person ends up in a position where they can make demands. It's also very dangerous to have like one person who's the primary donor, who's donating on a regular basis, and you're dependent on that. This is why we say Vaishyas, Kshatriyas, and Brahmanas, it's best if they don't work for a salary. You know, if you have a certain amount of money coming in every month, especially just from one person, and if that person were to withdraw the money, the project would fail. If the project becomes dependent on one person, then that person can dictate how the project is run. and they can dictate your preaching, and everything can become polluted. So one has to be very, very careful that when one accepts money or facility, one isn't put into a compromised position. Is that clear? Thank you for asking that. Advaitacharya ki jai. Hare Krishna. I don't know if anyone else other than you heard it, because we were having problems with the internet.